Welcome to our first installment of Flashback Friday. I am Matt Carothers. And as most of you are aware, we're already in the mode of celebrating the Breeders' Cup, even though we're still 2.5 months away, because we're approaching the 40-year anniversary of the Breeders' Cup. It'll be held at Santa Anita November 3rd and 4th for the 11th time at the Great Race Place. Breeders' Cup, it all began back at the late great Hollywood Park back in 1984. And since then, we've had so many great memories, so many great storylines. What we're going to try to do with this particular show, it's not going to be easy, is try to find some of the best of the best when it comes to those storylines, when it comes to those races, those individual performances with the drama and the emotion, all the things that have made the Breeders' Cup so special for nearly 4 decades. So we thought it was fitting for our first show to be about a race that was really almost one of the most emotional races in the history of the Breeders' Cup. It involved one of the all-time great horses, who was the most popular horse of her generation by a mile. And we're talking about Zenyatta, and we're going to go back to Churchill Downs Under the Lights, Breeders' Cup Classic 2010. Before we jump into the story, most of you are aware that we lost the owner of Zenyatta a couple of days ago. Mr. Jerry Moss passed away at the age of 88. He was a great man. He was an individual who always had a big smile on his face, and somebody who loved horse racing and was the owner of Giacomo, who won the Kentucky Derby in 2005. And obviously with Zenyatta, the story from her is unbelievable. And after her career, able to visit her for years on end. So a big loss, obviously, in racing with Mr. Moss. In terms of Zenyatta, she won the Classic in 2009 at Santa Anita, the only female to win the race. She was trying to go back-to-back at Churchill in 2010, joining Tiz Now as the only back-to-back winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic. And you know the rest. She ran into a very, very good, underrated racehorse in Blame and a jockey in Garrett Gomez, the late, great Garrett Gomez, one of the most talented riders we've ever seen. And that takes us to where we are right now. Claiborne Farm in beautiful Paris, Kentucky, as Blame, the son of Arch, was owned and bred by Claiborne Farm and Adele Dilschneider. And I'm thrilled for the first episode to have Walker Hancock, the president and CEO of Claiborne Farm, join me for the telecast. Thank you, Walker.
Well, thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
It is. Unfortunately, it's been a rough week in terms of news and racing, with Mr. Moss's passing a couple of days ago. And Art Collector, a horse that was in a stand here at Claiborne Farm, passed away yesterday from the insidious illness that is laminitis. I'm sure when you heard about this yesterday, it was devastating.
Yeah, it's just gut-wrenching to hear. Feel so bad for Bill Mott and his team, and Bruce Lunsford and his wife Eleanor, and it's just Irma, who loved the horse so much. It's laminitis is such a terrible disease, and unfortunately, we just don't have a cure for it yet. But unfortunately, another great racehorse succumbs to laminitis.
Okay, back to our Flashback Friday race, which is the 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic. What were your first of all? Were you old enough to get a beer after that race at Churchill?
Yes, I was. Yes,
you were.
Barely.
You were legal to
by about a month or two.
To imbibe. I'm gonna ask you one question about the race. Then we're gonna go backwards and work forwards. What's the one thing that you, when you think of that race, immediately you think this?
You know, I've been in I'm a sports fan, and I've been in a lot of sports arenas and venues. And when they were coming down the stretch, I'm not sure I've heard a louder noise than that night. And it really gives you chills just still thinking back to it. The anticipation was so great, and everyone was so excited. And then it almost was just like a balloon burst, and everyone just went silent again.
It was cold that night.
It was cold.
It was really cold, if I recall.
And obviously, we were celebrating, and everyone's looking at us like, "How could you possibly be happy right now?" So you definitely felt like you were an away team going into a big time rival's home arena,
right,
or something, you know. But in fact, Churchill was Flames' home track, but it certainly didn't feel like it that night.
Okay, let's go back. He broke his maiden Blame on the. You reminded me before the show, actually, on the synthetic surface at Keeneland. When did you guys have an idea that? I mean, you probably knew he was good from the start. When did you have an idea that he could be a great racehorse?
So I was in college during that time, and my dad was obviously in charge of the stable. But I think it was about that time when he started get closer to his maiden victory at Keeneland that Al Stahl kind of told my dad and Miss Jill Center that this horse could run. It's funny. The summer I was home from school between college freshman sophomore year, I worked with the yearlings, and Blaine was actually in my barn as a yearling
cool.
the summer I worked, and we had 3 or 4 others in there, and I would have told you Blaine was middle of the road at that time.
Okay.
There was another.
So you never know.
There was
at that age.
Exactly. You never know when they're yearlings. There was another arch colt that everyone loved, and not Blaine because he was my arch too, obviously. So everyone was focused on this other horse. This other horse, I don't think ever broke his mate. And Blaine obviously becomes a champion, but he always kind of flew under the radar. Never had a bad day. Just kind of put his head down, no issues, coming back in, whatever. So, you really never know until I hit the cross the finish line first.
You mentioned that he loved Churchill, and so let's get into some of his campaign. I'll begin with he won the Clark at Churchill towards the end of his 3-year-old year, so he beat older horses in that event, and then he had quite the 4-year-old campaign. I mean, this is a horse that I know you don't want to be bragging about him too much, so I'll do some of the bragging for you. I mean, very underrated racehorse. His 4-year-old campaign, he won the Schaefer at Pimlico. I believe that was Preakness Day. Mm-hmm. And then he went on this run. Then he wins the Foster at Churchill impressively. And then I think we're going to show it right now.
Quality Road into the far turn, and now Blame is shaken up there by Garrett Gomez. He's still 4.5 lengths behind. A break of 6 back to Jardim, and Mind That Bird is better than a dozen from the lead. Around the far turn, Quality Road bracing for the challenges to come. Here's Musket Man, Haynesfield still running in third. Blame's getting closer now. He switched outside. The field turns for home with Quality Road to catch. Top of the stretch. Quality Road leads by 1.5 lengths. Musket Man is second. Here comes Blame with that stretch run of his on the outside. Blame is coming hard at Quality Road. Quality Road is digging down deep. Blame is coming at him with a menacing run. Quality Road and Blame, a photo finish that Blame got. Blame got it by a nostril in the very last moment to defeat Quality Road.
I mean, how do you come out of that race?
He's great. I remember we went back to the barn, saw him. He was so proud of him, so proud of himself and happy. And he came out of it well. And at that point, we knew he was a serious Breeders' Cup Classic contender.
And then he ran the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and he ran into a very good New York bred named Haynesfield, who got the lead and went wire to wire. And that were you going into the Breeders' Cup? Were you guys paying attention to Zenyatta? Out on the West Coast, she was 5 for 5, I think in 2010, obviously undefeated.
Yeah, I think the night that he won the Whitney, I think she won a big race out of Del Mar. So I remember watching that race in the bar after Blame had won the Whitney. And of course, you knew she was probably the going to be the prohibitive favorite for the Classic, and she was going to be the one to beat.
So coming into the Classic, where was the? I mean, you knew how good Zenyatta was. You knew she won the Classic the year before. Obviously, that was on the synthetic at Santa, but she'd proven herself on dirt as well with that unbelievable win, I think, beating Ginger Punch in the Apple Blossom. How confident were you guys going into the race?
Well, the horse couldn't have been doing any better. I know. We knew that Zenyatta was going to have to bring her A+ game to beat him, and Blame got the better of her that night. But he was doing so well going into the race, and it really was a showdown between those two.
Okay, so then on Thursday, 2 days before the Breeders' Cup Classic, Gomez gets hurt. He hurts his shoulder. And from what I was reading, preparing for this, he actually rode in the marathon. It's a nice race to ride, probably with a bad shoulder, at 1 3/4 miles. And after the race, his right shoulder was hurting him to the point where he had the outrider take him around so he'd kind of quietly make his way into the jocks room. How much did you guys know about this injury?
We knew obviously he was injured in the spill, but I think maybe my dad knew more than me, but we knew he was hurt, but we didn't know the severity of his injury until after the race, obviously.
2 hairline fractures.
2 hairline fractures.
One
So
below
he's-
his shoulder blade,
yeah,
one on top of his shoulder.
basically-
Was revealed a couple weeks later.
yeah, basically won the classic with a broken shoulder and arm, which, I mean, he was one of the most incredible riders, that's ever ridden a horse, in my opinion. But he was so tough, and I give him the credit for he rode a perfect race that night.
All right, let's go back to that night, 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic, Churchill Downs under the lights, and yeah, it was a masterful ride from Garrett Gomez, and things didn't go very well for Mike Smith early on in that race. And he said afterwards she wasn't handling the kickback. It just took her. I mean, she was always pretty far back in her races, but in the Classic, she broke even a little bit slower than she normally does, and it took her even longer for her to gain her footing.
I remember thinking when they went by us for the first time, I thought something was wrong with her because she was so far back, But obviously she picked it up as they went down the backside. But I remember thinking, wow, she's really far. She's going to have a lot of work to do.
Recently, before we get to the race, odds in that race, she was even money.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't even second choice. You know who's second choice?
Quality Road.
Looking at Lucky.
Looking at Lucky. Okay.
Baffert factor, and nothing against Looking at Lucky. He was a terrific racehorse.
Yeah.
But you guys, when the Foster, when the Whitney, second the Jockey Club, their race going into the Classic was a win in the Indiana Derby. Nothing against Looking at Lucky, but that's the power
And
of
he's a
Bob.
3-year-old,
power
right?
Right, a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
It was his first start against Older.
Yeah, right.
Dude, he was 9-2 second choice.
Yeah.
And Blame was 5-1 in the race.
If you look back at Blame's PPs, he was only favored in like 3 or 4 of his starts. Like he always was like discounted for whatever reason.
And Blame, a horse who his last 9 races of his career, his buyers are between 101 and 111. I think we have the race now. Let's go to the 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic. We'll just talk our way through this race. With the crowd going crazy, as you mentioned, early on, and then they went from a frenzy to kind of like no noise at all.
Mm-hmm.
Once it was pretty much known, even though it was close, that Blame had won the race. So here we go. We're going to show the Classic, and Zenyatta, it's not the easiest to follow in this particular spot on this video, but Zenyatta is obviously dead last right now. You can see the Mr. Moss's Silks dead last, not handling the track very well. And Gomez does a great job. You break from the 5 hole, I believe. He does a great job getting to the rail pretty early on.
Yep, saves ground. Yeah, this is about the time when I thought something was wrong with her because she started to seem like dropping further and further back. And that was before they flashed the quarter. I think they had pretty fast fractions up front.
Yeah, they went 23-4 for the opening quarter, which is they picked up the second quarter.
Yeah,
they went, I think, a
Then
23-1 second quarter to produce a 47 half mile in this event. And where were you watching the race?
I was in our traditional box at Churchill, kind of right there in the home stretch, close to the finish line.
Are you able to follow what's going on at this point in time with the race?
Yeah, this is before they had the big jumbotron, but yeah, I was so nervous I couldn't watch through my binoculars because I was shaking so bad, so I had to just put them down. So I was just basically watching the screen in the infield.
Okay. Are you keeping your eye on Zenyatta as well, or are you just watching Blame?
Well, when they went by this the first time, I was watching Zenyatta, but then you kind of lose track of Blame here because they're all bunched. There's basically 2 groups of horses, and I just know he's in the second bunch somewhere on the rail.
And we're going to get to it relatively soon. Gomez makes the winning move.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
we're getting fairly close to it. Where, it was a pretty gutty move.
It was. I don't know if many other riders would do the move he did, but he won the race right about here in a second.
Right into the quarter pole.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he just kind of just blows through a hole that's not. It's there, but it's barely there, and he just blows right through.
You're going to see him split horses.
Right.
Here comes
right
Gomez.
Now.
Right. Yeah. Right
now.
Here. Right there. And now he forges to the lead, and Zenyatta's rolling down. So what? I hate the question. What was going through your mind? But I'm going to ask it anyway. You remember?
Just where's the wire? Wire. Just the wire. Because I didn't know. She never passes him. He has ears pinned. Yeah, it looks like she's going to, but she never does. And then he gallops out well in front. But
so were you guys just? Did you? You just won the Breeders' Cup Classic, right? That's the 2 biggest races we have are the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic, right? You won the Breeders' Cup Classic. Did you feel like you had to be a little bit more reserved because that was Zenyatta, or did you it's just so spontaneous and you're acting on emotion, you just go crazy?
Yeah, it was spontaneous.
That's what I would have done.
But you definitely respect what she had done and what she had accomplished. hate to be the one that beat her, but obviously you just won the Breeders' Cup Classic. You're not going to be upset. But
that's what Garrett said in the press conference.
Yeah,
he said, I wanted her to go out undefeated, just not at my expense.
Yeah, exactly. Same. I share the same sentiment. But yeah, you're all celebrating, and people start looking at you like, how are you guys celebrating? Zenyatta just lost.
So you had some bad stares.
Oh yeah, definitely.
From some folks.
Yeah.
Did you?
And I remember they booed. We were in the winner's circle, and people were booing.
Yeah. Right. I mean, people. I mean, I was there, and people traveled from everywhere. I mean, the Zenyatta signs were nuts. I mean, as I mentioned, sort of in the open. I mean, easily most popular horse of her generation. The only horse, and I'm an old guy, the only horse I can think even rivals her from a popularity standpoint was John Henry when I was a kid. So she was obviously immensely popular. Everyone was there for Zenyatta, everyone better. And for her to lose like, did you go to any of the press conferences afterwards? Did you see Mike Smith's press conference?
I didn't see Mike's, but I went for my dad's and Miss Jill Schneider's and Al's, whatever the winner, Blame's press conference, but we didn't stick around for Mike's.
So out of that race, Blame not real popular with the fans at that point in time, and that was a bit of a difficult situation.
It was. We had to hire extra security. We were getting death threats via emails and calls here at the farm. People saying they were going to come hurt him or kill him or whatever, and it was kind of scary. Like I said, he got 24-hour security for about six to 8 weeks after he won, and then we were really cautious with people on tours, or whatever that next year. I don't think we really showed them much because we were worried about what someone might do to them.
And then they had the Eclipse Awards. And do you guys, even though you guys beat Zenyatta in the Classic, were you still probably the mindset that we're not going to win?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of heard that a lot of people had probably voted Zenyatta, and we thought there might be we figured there was a slim chance, but probably a slim chance at that.
Because it's rare for a horse, because usually the only time a Classic winner isn't Horse of the Year is if they won the Classic, like, at like Volponi, at like some huge price, which means they didn't have that great of a year. That's why they're that price in the Classic. But to be 5-1 and should have been a shorter price than that, based on the resume that he had in 2010. That was the exception. A horse with that kind of campaign not being Horse of the Year.
Yeah, I feel like if Zenyatta had won Horse of the Year in 2009, I think Blame might have got it in 2010, but they gave it to Rachel. That's another debate. But back to back, really strong debates either way. Yeah,
make cases for 9 and 10.
I feel like we haven't really had that close of a race in years from 09 and 10 between those two years. There was a lot of people feeling very strongly different ways.
Yeah, we could have one this year, maybe. I don't know if the horse is at the level of these horses. So he's been doing great. We're going to show him here as we conclude the program in a moment. But let's talk about him as a sire. Wet Paint, running in the Alabama. I think she's a 2-1 morning line favorite tomorrow.
Yep, she is. He's had a really great year on the racetrack. Wet Paint's definitely led the charge there, and he's really becoming shown that he's going to be a great broodmare sire.
He looks great too.
Yeah.
He looks awesome.
Forte's he's also the dam sire of him, and
look at him there. He's 17.
Yeah, he looks great. He look like he could go to the track tomorrow if you wanted him to. But 17 years old, not showing his age whatsoever. He probably had his best year in the breeding shed he's had in quite some time. So,
really?
He's doing really well.
And tremendous broodmare.
Tremendous broodmare sire. And, Wet Paint's going in the Alabama. She should relish the 1.25 mile distance just like he did. So we're looking forward to watching her run on Saturday.
Walker, I appreciate it.
All right. Thank
Walker
you, Matt.
Hancock, President, CEO of Claiborne Farm. Hope you enjoyed this flashback to the 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic, and we will see you next time on Flashback Friday.